Good morning and aloha. Welcome to the State Capitol. My name is John Mizuno. We are doing the Thursday, February 2nd, 2023 Human Services hearing agenda. Before I start, could I have members that are flanked to me, to my left, introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everybody. Jan Takanuchi, House District 27. Morning.
Thank you, Representative. And to my right.
Bert Kobayashi, District 20, all around Diamond Head.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for being here, members and testifiers. First up on the agenda, we've got House Bill 879, Attorney Generals.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno and members of the committee. I'm
morning.
Deputy Attorney General Erin Torres. We submitted testimony recommending amendments to this bill, including the deletion of Section 2 regarding independent evaluations, and amendments to Sections 4 and 10 of the bill regarding grandparent rights. It's detailed on page 3 of our written testimony. We also suggest deleting the amendments to the definition of aggravated circumstances and family. Additionally, we recommend that the amendment regarding the relative foster placement preference be moved from HRS Section 587A 10A to Section 587A 15B1. And finally, the department suggests the addition of definitions for bias, unbiased, and prejudice to provide clarity to the bill. We appreciate the opportunity to testify, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Next up, we've got the Department of Human Services, DHS.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tim Hitchens. I'm the Social Services Division Assistant Administrator. And speaking on behalf of the department, we stand on our written testimony, offering comments, and I'm available for questions should you have any.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next up, members, we've got 3 individuals. First up, Peggy Hong.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee.
Good morning.
My name is Peggy Hong, and I'm here with my husband, Christopher Hong. We are grandparents. On April 29, 2021, our daughter, Paula Laxon Liana Lani Hong, killed herself because of domestic violence and abuse. She left behind, perpetrated upon her by her partner and father of her children. She left behind twins, a boy and a girl, who were 11 years old at the time. On August 15, 2021, we were able to first see them, and the boy told us in tears that he wanted to kill himself and thought about dying every day. And the girl confessed to us that she tried to slit her wrists, but her friends stopped her, and it was because of the father. We called the suicide crisis hotline, we called HPD. The officer declared imminent danger because the father was to pick the children up the next morning, and CPS was called. We put the children in the car August 16th, 4 a.m., and that was the last time we saw them. When they went into foster care, we tried to see them, and we were told we had no rights to see our children, our grandchildren. We said, you know, we're the ones who tried to save them. We called the police, we called for help, and we were to no avail. A couple months later, the children were returned to the father. He sold the family home, took the money, and left Oahu, and went to live on a neighbor island. CPS will not tell us where they are. That's the last time we saw our grandchildren. We're here today not because of all the legalese and all this other stuff that's going on, but to give you a real life case of how CPS has failed us. In the letters statement from DHS where they talk about foster placement to families, preference, it's not true. When you have bias from the caseworker, we have 5 family members who wanted to be foster parents to the children, one of whom was a retired social worker who did case management, and none of us were chosen. We had 2 sets of grandparents, the retired social worker, another aunt, and a niece. Also, DHS has said how we have Epic Ohana and grandparents can go that way. Well, for us, the father denied access to Epic Ohana. So we have not seen our grandchildren. We are here pleading to make some changes so that we as grandparents have rights and can at least see our grandchildren during foster placement. For us, it's too late. The children are gone. We're trying to do this to help other grandparents and other families who have been victimized by, to us, our perspective, obviously, because it's personal, a non-functioning CPS system. We're sure there are good social workers out there, but for us, it's always personal. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Okay, next up, we've got as an individual, Lori Tochiki. Lori provided comments. Next up, Dara Carlin. As an individual, provided comments. Okay, anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 879, either here or on Zoom? Seeing none, members, questions? Questions? Yes, Representative Kobayashi.
For DHS, in the case of the situation, I'm looking at page 9, line 4. The child's biological grandparents shall be vested with the rights, duties, etc. How would you pick which grandparents? Maternal, paternal? And I know one case where a child happily says that she has 5 grandparents because of the divorce.
Yeah, that's a good and fair question. When we enter a family's life, we always do a full assessment and outreach to as much family as we can identify using family finding techniques and interviews and gathering of information. And then we seek what's in the best interest of the children, fully respecting the parents' rights to parent their children as well.
No, you don't get that.
Sure.
The wording is, the grandparents shall be vested. So, 2 sets of grandparents shall be vested. You don't have a choice now. So do you give both sets of grandparents vested rights?
I think that's one of our concerns for the bill as it's written.
What if we just change the shall to may? Does that help?
Well, there are other considerations there as well. I mean, if the parents are deceased and we're trying to work between and among many family members, we don't want it to automatically default to the grandparents, but we would certainly consider that.
Okay.
So we'd have to do a full assessment of all kin available. Does that help?
A little, yeah, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. Any more questions, members? Could I get Peggy and Christopher Hong back up? If you can come up for question, or Mr. and Mrs. Hong, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you. It's been
It's an
tough.
emotional issue. We get that. As you heard the Attorney General's office, as well as the Department of Human Services office, this bill, it's very complex. And sometimes there are certain parts of the bill that may not be congruent to the Constitution. But in talking with the author, your representative, she's gonna do her best to craft amendments. Still not gonna be exactly perfect. Many bills are just a work in progress. But we're gonna do our best to see that this gets out of our committee. Yes, Representative. So I just wanted to thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And thank your representative for doing a great job on this bill. We're gonna do the best we can. But I wanted to make sure there's no false sense of security. There are issues of concern with, again, stated by the AGs and the Department of Human Services. We will do the best we can working with your representative to get something out of our committee.
Thank you. May I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you get our written testimony? Because what was uploaded was just one word, support, and the actual written testimony somehow.
That happens, but yeah.
You got
we
it?
got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But thank you very much. Thank you
you.
for being here. Okay, members, any further questions? Yes, Representative Kobayashi.
I think that in crafting the bill, you might look at the term specialized training, because that's not defined. And, you know, it could be 1 3-hour session or one, I don't know what.
Oh, thank you, Representative Kobayashi. Any further questions, members, before we move on to the next bill? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to go on to the next bill. This is House Bill 1181. 1181, first up, Attorney General's Office.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno and members of the committee. My name is Brandon Flores. I'm the Assistant Administrator of the Child Support Enforcement Agency. We've submitted written testimony appreciating the intent of the bill. Would note that probably the biggest obstacle right now to implementing a pass-through is that we are currently modernizing our case management system. That process is expected to take approximately 2 years, and so we'd be unable to make any functional changes to the system during that time period. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Next up, DHS Director Kathy Betts or her representative.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Catherine Scardino. I'm the TANF Program Administrator with the Department of Human Services, here on behalf of Director Betts.
Good morning.
Good morning. The department stands on its written testimony providing comments, and we respectfully request this committee to consider House Bill 445. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, next up, Midwives Alliance of Hawaii. Provided testimony in support, Zonta Club of Hilo.
Yes, good morning. My name is Charlene Iboshi. Good morning, Chair Mizuno and members of the committee. I testified on Tuesday, which is on House Bill 445, and the two should be considered at the same time. Our position, we presented written testimony. We'll stand by that, but we asked this committee to consider moving both bills forward. It appears that the Department of Human Services, as well as the CSEA, Attorney General's Office, are in support of the intent of the bill. So we ask that it move forward. What we recommend, based on the testimony last Tuesday and today in the written testimony, they're not ready. So we're not asking to go forward if they're not ready. However, what we would recommend, instead of a study group, we would recommend an implementation work group. And the reason for this is this has been before the legislature since 2020. In January of 2020, the same testimony was presented by both the Attorney General's Office as well as DHS, and the same problems were alerted. Because our position is, if the legislature makes a clear policy statement that they support the pass-through, there is more likelihood that there would be some explanation and support for the work that the two departments are doing to get this accomplished. So we recommend a deadline of 2025 for implementation and a yearly report as to why I think it's about $400 million in TANF surplus is still unspent, what the hurdles are, especially the impact of the pass-through on the SNAP or food stamp benefit. 25 other states have the same pass-through. So they must have dealt with it, and maybe there's a way to accommodate the concerns that are expressed there. And so we stand on our testimony. We support the pass-through bill and recommend that it be clear that the legislature supports the pass-through and the intention, and instead of just a study group, have it as an implementation work group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up, we've got Save Medicaid Hawaii. Provided testimony in support. Next, we have Hawaii Children's Action Network speaks. Provided testimony in support. Next, we have two individuals, Deborah Nemad. Deborah provided testimony in support. Melissa Chong provided testimony in support. Anyone either here or on Zoom wishing to testify on House Bill 1181? If not, members, are there any questions? No questions? Okay, thank you very much, members. We're going to move on to the next bill on the agenda. That's House Bill 1416. First up, State Council on Developmental Disabilities.
Morning, Chair.
Good morning,
Vice
Doctor.
Chair. Thank
Good
you.
to see ya.
Dange Bartolos, Hawaii State Council on Developmental Disabilities Executive Administrator. We're in support of this measure. What we'd like to say is if the disregard of the 2,000 is on initial eligibility, if DHS finds that as a hardship, we ask that maybe amendment be made that as continued eligibility, that the assets be disregarded. Because a lot of individuals, if they get up to the $2,000 mark or go over, they foolishly spend the money. They hurry up and get rid of it to keep their Medicaid, where they're not allowed to save it. And so I understand an initial eligibility assets, but I think to continue in renewals, I think that should be eliminated. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Doctor. Next up, we have the Attorney General's Office.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno, members of the committee, Deputy Attorney General Aaron Lau on behalf of the Department of the Attorney General. The Department of the Attorney General submitted written testimony and provided comments. Essentially, this bill would remove the $2,000 asset requirement or limitation for eligibility for medical assistance, and then require DHS to submit a report regarding the effects of that removal. The federal regulations require that DHS submit a state plan amendment and receive approval prior to from CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, prior to modifying an individual asset limit for eligibility. Therefore, we recommended language in our written testimony for your consideration. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Next up, Department of Human Services. DHS. Provided comments. Next, we have one individual, Kylie, don't have the last name.
Swan.
Swan, thank you.
Good morning, Chair and Vice Chair and committee members. My name is Kylie, and I'm here to testify in support of House Bill 1416. I work and I'm lucky to have an able account to save my money because my mom helped me. But not everyone can qualify for able account. They should not forced to live poor and keep their Medicaid. Let me know if you have any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie. Okay, that's all the testifiers I have on the list. Anyone here or on Zoom wishing to testify? Again, we're on House Bill 1416. If not, members, any questions? No questions? Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next bill. 1416?
Yeah.
What? Kylie, what?
No, DHS.
DHS? Yeah, they said it's going to be contingent.
Yeah.
We need to get approval by Medicare and Medicaid.
Right.
Did you have a question?
Yeah.
Aaron, Attorney General's Office?
Oh, no, this would be for Department of Human Services.
Oh, but Department of Human Services isn't here.
Oh, okay.
But we've got the language from the AGs, contingent on the approval of the Hawaii
Right,
State
right.
Plan Amendment by
Yeah.
the centers. They don't want to lose federal funding. They just want to make sure we're in compliant before we go.
Mhm.
So that's the language. But yeah, DHS, I called DHS, they're not here
Mhm, okay.
for this bill. Okay, if there's, did you want to try? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you, members. We're going to move on to the next bill on the agenda. This is House Bill 775, Public Safety. Public Safety provided comments. Next up, Department of Law Enforcement. Provided comments. Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission. Provided testimony in support. Shopo. Organization of Police Officers provided testimony in support. Hawaii Substance Abuse Coalition provided testimony in support. Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center provided testimony in support. National Association of Social Workers, Hawaii Chapter provided testimony in support. I've got 4 individuals all providing testimony in support. Anyone here or on Zoom wishing to testify on House Bill 775? Okay, if not, members, are there any questions? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the next bill on the agenda. Members, we're on House Bill 777. First up, Department of Human Services.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tim Hitchens, Assistant Administrator for the Social Services Division under DHS, speaking on behalf of DHS, and the Department of Human Services supports this bill. We also submitted a measure, House Bill 1064, for consideration. I'll be available for any questions should you have them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I do not have any other testifiers on House Bill 777 listed. Is there anyone in the audience or on Zoom that wanted to testify on House Bill 777? If not, members, any questions? No? Oh, Representative Kobayashi?
For DHS, is your bill 1064 identical or just similar?
Sure, it's very close. It has some slight differences in some of the language. It's a little more accurate. Yeah, so there's some terms that have been updated, resource caregiver over foster parent, for instance, but they are very similar.
But yours is more, quote, accurate?
Ours is more current and accurate, I would believe.
So should we use your language?
We would prefer that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, any further questions? House Bill 777. Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Going to move on to the next bill on the agenda, House Bill 261, Department of Human Services.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno and members of the committee. My name is Stacy Tonouchi from the Department of Human Services, representing Director Betts today. We stand on our written testimony and appreciate the intent of the bill. If I may, I'd like to highlight the department's request. Given the continuing economic impacts of COVID-19 on childcare facilities' ability to maintain sufficient staff levels, our department suggests the legislature consider changing the accreditation requirements to be voluntary until the childcare workforce is stabilized. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony, and I am available for questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, we have the Executive Office on Early Learning, EOEL. Provided testimony in support. Director of Early Education, University of Hawaii at Manoa, Terry Locke, provided testimony in support. Attorney General's Office.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for, I'm Dr. Terry Locke from the University of Hawaii, and I stand in support of House Bill 261. But I do want to say, related to what Department of Human Services mentioned, our childcare industry really needs to be stabilized. So I think we need to really work hard at, I'd like to just propose that we really make sure that, that whether it's voluntary, I would support the voluntary, but we at the same time really consider supporting programs already who want to become accredited. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity
Thank you.
to testify.
Thank you, Ms. Locke. Thank you. Next up, we have the Attorney General's office.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno, members of the committee. I'm Melissa Coloni, Deputy Attorney General. The department offers comments today. We've identified a possible constitutional issue under Article 7, Section 4, which in part provides that no grant of public money shall be made except pursuant to standards provided by law. It doesn't appear this bill has any standards for the distribution of the grant funds, so we recommend adding standards, and we attached some sample standards to our testimony that could be used or amended to fit the legislature's intent for this bill. And I'm here if you have any questions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Thank you
you.
very much. Okay, next up, AAUW of Hawaii. Provided testimony in support, Hawaii Association of School Psychologists. Provided testimony in support, Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. Provided testimony in support, Hawaii Children's Action Network speaks.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Nice to see you again on this measure, just a different number. We stand on our testimony and again are okay with the changing it to voluntary, but again, much like Dr. Locke shared, we want to make sure it doesn't undermine the need for this, even if it's voluntary. There is still a great need for this support, the supports for providers. And I'm here to answer any questions. Mahalo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, next up, Early Childhood Action Strategy.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno and
morning.
members of the committee.
Good morning.
My name is Vivian Eto, and I'm here on behalf of Early Childhood Action Strategy to speak in support of House Bill 261. We're very excited about the prospect of preschool expansion and especially appreciate proposals to expand opportunities via preschool open doors. We also appreciate the purpose of the accreditation measures in Act 46 and 210 intended to ensure that early learning experiences for our keiki are quality experiences. But national quality accreditation is a heavy and expensive lift for early care and learning programs. And if programs aren't provided with technical assistance and financial supports to help them through the process successfully, we really risk a reduction in available preschool options for children, as well as restrictions to family choice and a real barrier to our preschool expansion goals. The program proposed by this bill would offer critical assistance with fees and improvement costs and technical assistance to help providers meet accreditation standards and navigate the process of achieving accreditation. We do also support the potential change to making accreditation voluntary, but again, we do hope you will support this measure because of the needed program, regardless of the mandatory or voluntary nature of accreditation. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and please know I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, we've got Hawaii Association for the Education of Young Children. Provided testimony in support. Testimony from the same organization, also in support. And members, I've got nine individuals, 8 of whom provided testimony in support, 1 who provided testimony in opposition. So if there's any members here in the audience or on Zoom wishing to testify on House Bill 261, please come on up and state your name.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno and all the members of the committee. I'm Linda Ilento, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to provide. I am the one who's opposing this particular measure, and I'll tell you some reasons why. First of all, I'm going to read my short testimony and then give you a couple of more points. let's see. I am requesting that the committee consider revising Section 346-184 of the Hawaii Revised Statutes by adding the Association of Christian Schools International, which is known as ACSI, as an accrediting organization, or by exempting providers with ACSI accreditation from the section. I'm asking that the reason for this is to protect our families' choices and freedom from religious discrimination, because I believe this particular bill, as it's written, will continue, or it will discriminate against the churches, the nonprofit organizations, those who do have the ACSI accreditation, which is rigorous and very comparable, if not, I believe, better than the national early education accreditations that are listed in this, that's already listed in our revised statute. Actually, this was the first time I read and was very surprised how it changed a couple of years ago. So I'm here to offer a couple more comments. I am a mother of adult children and now a grandmother. Anyway, my adult children went to private schools with preschools with the ACSI accreditation, and now I'm a grandmother, and my grandkids have also gone to ACSI accredited preschools. And just for your information, if you're not aware, the Child Care Connection Program for funding and subsidies, as well as the Open Doors, both apply to preschools as long as they're considered and they're accredited or licensed by the Department of Human Services. They can qualify, or parents can qualify for both funding, Open Doors, and the child care subsidies through the state, which me as a parent, I am very grateful, and so are my kids. A couple more ideas. Preschool expansion is something I've heard that this bill would consider. I believe it would do the opposite for those particular organizations who choose the ACSI. They don't need to duplicate and have any other accreditations. And last, in the particular bill, I believe it said something about or director's approval of an accreditation. It still focuses on something comparable to the National Early Education. I'm not sure if ACSI would even be considered. So I'd like to see ACSI completely separate and considered to definitely keep our parents and our children in those particular schools. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Linda. And
Thank
great
you.
working with you on some of the bills in the past after COVID. Haven't seen you, so good to see you back at the Capitol.
Thank you. I've been in other committees. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, that's all the testifiers I have. Questions? Questions? Yes, Representative, oh, I'm sorry, come on up, please. I apologize.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm Anna Stone, and I'm with Easter Seals of Hawaii.
Oh, we got your late testimony. I apologize.
Yes. Would it be okay if I read the letter, or would you be
Probably
satisfied
better if
with
you just sum it up for the members to
Yeah,
understand.
we are in support of House Bill 261. These are for the programs that have faced numerous challenges, especially during the pandemic, and that never wavered in their dedication to caring for our children. But we also think that the accreditation process is intensive and time-consuming and very expensive. And as mentioned earlier, it costs money just to enter that accreditation process. Preschool operators often need technical support to understand and implement accreditation requirements, and this support can be difficult to obtain, and so many programs operate already on razor-thin margins, and we ask for your support of House Bill 261. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, now, members, if there's no further testimony on 261, questions, Representative Kobayashi?
For DHS, there are two places where there are blank dollar amounts. We can't pass a bill really without filling in those dollar amounts. Do you have any estimates?
Scott Nakasone, Department of Human Services. To answer your question, Representative, we are needing to do further research on that. We will be providing those numbers as if the bill passes further. We will be providing numbers.
Could you tell me how many groups would be affected by this distinction that you made about a child care facility not owned or operated or part of a private educational institution.
Do you have any numbers? Sorry, we can provide the committee with that information.
No, I mean, are there a lot? I would assume most are not
Of the
part
private-
of or owned or operated by a private educational institution.
I would say that, yeah, that the majority are probably not, but we would want to go back and verify that, and so we can provide the committee that information.
Well, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any further questions on House Bill 261? Yes, Representative Garcia.
For Mr. Lento? You mentioned the ASI schools currently they do have accreditation, correct, through the ASI
Yes.
national program. So if this bill were to pass, how would that affect church preschools or faith-based preschools or other nonprofit preschools?
I believe these faith-based preschools would no longer be able to get, or their students would not be able to receive the open doors as well as the childcare if because it is very stringent. It takes a lot of time. It is a lot of money in order to be accredited again through an AYC or a similar one. So if I were a preschool director, you have to consider that. And me as a parent, what do I choose? An organization, or if I do qualify for open doors and so forth, I'm going to have to choose possibly another provider, such as Carmina Kids, and that's not something I agree with. The other reason would be is I believe in AUIC or similar organizations do not support Christian faith, in that it would require the organization to agree with certain other types of beliefs and so forth. Sure. So those are my concerns, and
thank you.
Thank
So
you for
if
answering or
we
asking.
were to include the ASI part in the bill, then you'd be okay with it?
Yes.
Okay.
Because if it needs to be fair access, because if you're going to provide any type of support for a school or provider to get the NAUYC or similar type of accreditation, then you certainly should be able to spend my tax money to support those particular schools as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, further questions? Okay, if not, I had a question for the Attorney General's office. So in looking with from the testimony from DHS, they're saying that they want us to adopt this amendment that participants shall not be employed by the Department of Education, public charter schools, federally funded early Head Start programs, or a private educational institution. I assume that would cover some schools that are, that display religious schools, hypothetical religious schools. Why is that legally we may not be able to cover a religious school, if I can ask?
I actually haven't looked at that aspect of the bill, but I'm happy to follow up with the committee, absolutely.
Okay,
If you allow me
because
to.
Representative Garcia brought up a good point.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I just want to
I'm
make
sorry.
sure two things. We're not violating the Constitution, but also we respect freedom of religion. So his questions
Okay,
perk
I
my
understand.
interest, and so
Okay, I don't know the department's position on that, but I'm happy to follow up with the committee.
please do, because
I
I
will,
think
absolutely.
Yeah, the next committee is, I believe, Finance. Yeah, we really need to make sure legally this is sound before it continues on its way. So
Absolutely. I'll get
we
back to you as soon
Appreciate
as
your
possible,
help.
of course.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Members, further questions? Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to House Bill 391. First up, Executive Office on Early Learning. Provided testimony in support. Again, 391. Next up, Attorney General's Office.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno, members of the
morning.
committee. I'm Melissa Coloni, Deputy Attorney General. I've identified the same constitutional issue, Article 7, Section 4. We have recommended sample standards attached to our testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. Thank you. Next up, we've got the Department of Human Services.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno, members of the committee. Dana Luca with the Department of Human Services Child Care Regulation Program Office representing Director Betts today. The department supports the intent of the bill and stands on its written testimony. I do want to just make one correction to our written testimony. Incorrectly identified on page 2 in that first paragraph, qualified preschool staff. It should actually be qualified infant and toddler staff. I just kind of inadvertently got the language mixed up. And then the department respectfully recommends that state general funds be appropriated into the Child Care Grant Program Special Fund. And if the measure passes, we respectfully request an effective date after or later than 12/31/23. Thank you for this opportunity to testify, and I'm here for questions. Thank you.
Before you go, again,
yeah.
what was the amendment, page 2, what lines?
Oh.
Infant and toddler staff.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's amendment to our written testimony, line 4.
Okay. Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up, we've got the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women. Provided testimony in support. Hawaii Association of School Psychologists. Provided testimony in support. Tori Richard. Provided testimony in support. Melody Vega, Early Education Officer. Provided testimony in support. Hawaiian Host Group. Provided testimony in support. Hawaii Children's Action Network speaks. Provided testimony in support.
Chair.
Yes.
Aloha.
Aloha.
I just wanted to let you know that I'm here for comment or questions. I'm the Director of Early Learning for HCAN Speaks, and I also wanted to just alert to you that HB 391 and HB 547 are very similar, and so we feel that both of them get at what is essentially what we need to have a successful program. And so we just wanted to let you know that because there's a lot of community support between both of the two bills, and we would defer to the committee on which one is better. But we just wanted to see a pilot program move forward for infant and toddler center staff.
Okay.
Mahalo.
Thank you very much. I've actually got, I've probably got over 15 members, individuals, providing testimony and support. So if you would like to testify, come on up, either here or on Zoom. If not, members, questions again, we're on House Bill 391. Oh, yes, come on up.
Hi, Chair Mizuno. Josh Wish with Holamua Collective. We're just going to stand on our testimony and support. Just wanted to note that the bill very closely aligns with our mission, which is to make Hawaii more affordable for all working families, and we strongly support the bill.
Thanks, Joshua. Good to see you again, my friend.
Good to see you.
Okay, members, 391. Questions? Questions? Yes, Representative Kobayashi.
For DHS, when you distributed the federal American Rescue money, did you have standards such as discussed by Attorney General for who got the money?
Thank you for the question, Representative. Yes, we had criteria that was in alignment with the federal requirements of the American Rescue Plan stabilization grant.
How many workers did you help?
How many workers did our office have to implement the grant program?
No.
How many?
You say you distributed $72 million total, some of which went to eligible child care workers.
Yes.
How many child care workers did you help? Top of page 2. I'm sorry. I'm looking at your testimony,
So,
top of page 2.
I
And
don't, yes.
you, eligible childcare workers receive $2,500 retention bonus, $1,000 health and wellness bonus. How many people?
That's correct. I don't have those numbers with me today. I can get that for you. I just have the numbers for the total number of services that received the grant award.
Oh, I see. I mean, what I'm thinking of is that we probably would not put $72 million into this bill. So you've already given out some monies, I don't know how much. And you said that you already have standards by which you gave out this money.
Correct.
So it would seem that you would know how many people might receive this money, as in this grant. Because you already gave out the money, right?
Yes.
So
For this bill, for the infant and toddler staff, according to our last report in December 2022, there were a total of 168 qualified infant toddler caregivers, 44 lead caregivers, and 216 aides. But that information, we don't know if that, I don't have those information, whether or not they would meet that criteria for staff at infant and toddler childcare facilities.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, members, any other questions? Okay, members, seeing no other questions, we're going to move on to the next bill on the agenda. We have House Bill 502, Executive Office on Early Learning, EOEL. Provided comments. Next up, DHS.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno and members of the committee. My name is Stacy Tonouchi from the Department of Human Services, representing Director Betts today. We stand on a written testimony and appreciate the intent of the bill. Respectfully, I'd like to highlight in our written testimony, we ask for clarification if the intent is for federal child care and development funds to provide child care connection Hawaii subsidies when no eligible child care connection Hawaii child is enrolled in the contracted infant and toddler slot. Currently, DHS, we provide federal subsidies based on the child's enrollment. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony, and I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we've got Hawaii Association of School Psychologists, provided testimony in support. University of Hawaii at Manoa, Terry Locke, provided testimony in support. Melody Vega, Early Education Officer, testimony in support. Hawaii Children's Action Network speaks. Thank you. Early Childhood Action Strategy.
Oh, aloha.
Aloha.
Good morning again, Chair and members of the committee. Vivian Eto with Early Childhood Action Strategy. I'm speaking in support of House Bill 502. I just want to highlight the significant unmet need we have for infant and toddler childcare, and the fact that we've got some real disincentives in the way our subsidy system works, specifically unstable and unpredictable enrollment and attendance, as well as insufficient payment rates, which can really deter providers from serving subsidy children. This bill, the improved economic stability and agency provided by direct contracts for subsidy slots between DHS and infant toddler programs, would really help increase participation of childcare providers in the subsidy system and increase the supply of available infant and toddler care, both for families receiving subsidy as well as potentially other families, because of the incentive it might provide providers to continue or potentially start doing infant and toddler care. With the very scarce availability of childcare for infants and toddlers, measures of this kind that support the financial viability of childcare programs are really key to shoring up and increasing access to infant toddler care, not only for subsidy families, but for all of Hawaii's families. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify, and please know I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, I've got 12 individuals, all in support of House Bill 502. Anyone here or on Zoom wishing to testify on House Bill 502? If not, members, any questions? Seeing none, thank you, members. Can we move on to the next measure? We've got House Bill 504, Executive Office on Early Learning. Provided testimony in support, Attorney General's Office.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno, members of the committee, Melissa Coloni, Deputy Attorney General. We've identified the same constitutional issue related to Article 7, Section 4, that provides in part no grant of public money shall be made except pursuant to standards provided by law. And we have provided sample standards attached to our testimony that could be used or amended to fit the legislature's intent. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next up, Department of Human Services.
Good morning, Chair
Good morning.
Mizuno and members of the committee. Dana Luca with the Department of Human Services Child Care Regulation Program Office, representing Director Betts today. The department supports the intent of the bill, stands on its written testimony, and recommends an amendment or amendments. The department respectfully recommends that state general funds be appropriated into the Child Care Grant Program Special Fund, and respectfully requests an effect, if the measure passes, request an effective date after or later than 12/31/23. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up, Hawaii Children's Action Network speaks.
Aloha again, Chair, members of the committee. You have our testimony. What we wanted to note was that over the course of the last nearly a year, we've been working with the Department of Human Services to hear their concerns. The idea of a wage subsidy pilot is not new. It was brought before the legislature last year and had some very good conversations. And since then, that facilitated more conversations. One of the things that was a concern was ensuring that there was a size. The pilot group was one that you could actually pilot. And so that's one of the reasons we were in favor of an infant toddler center one, because the size would be small enough that you could actually pilot. So with that, we respectfully ask that if there is a wage subsidy pilot, that it be one in which it furthers the infant toddler center staff just for kind of logistics, but also starting from the bottom as far, I hate to say it, but essentially the bottom, the lowest paid of most of our early childhood care and educational professionals are the ones who work with our youngest. So the younger age you care for, your wage is likely proportionate to that and likely to be lower. So we think let's start with the folks who are farthest from equity and move forward. It's also logistically makes a lot of sense. However, if the committee decides to move this measure forward, we did offer some amendments to clarify who would be benefiting from the pilot program. Thank you, and here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And I've got one individual, Terry Locke, providing comments.
Aloha again.
Good morning.
I just want to say that I support the intent of the bill, and because as you heard earlier, low wages has been, and especially in our state with the high cost of living, it's very difficult to retain and recruit early educators. And Hawaii, at our the project that I ran at the University of Hawaii, we actually commissioned the RAND Corporation to do a study on the compensation and other issues. And so, yes, so we have data that really does support that. What I'm concerned about this particular bill is that it presents such a large population that to pilot that population it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So I recommend that DHS first start with infant and toddlers because it's a smaller size, it's a sizable smaller population, and it would be better to pilot that group. So I suggest that we suggest House Bill 547 and House Bill 391 would be the bill to support instead of this one. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer
391,
them.
what was the other bill? 391.
547. Yes.
Yes, when you look at the three, yes.
Yes, thank you.
And you see that in the opinion by the Attorney Generals as well as DHS. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 504? If not, members' questions? Representative Kobayashi.
Has DHS looked at the 6-page addendum to the Attorney General's testimony? This sets up standards.
Yeah, Dana? DHS?
Sets up standards for who can receive a grant.
Thank you for your question, Representative. I briefly read through it, but our office did work closely with the Department of Attorney General's office on the ARPA stabilization grant to ensure that we were meeting those standards and requirements, that we weren't in violation of the Constitution.
So, I mean, so you've seen these standards, and I assume that they can be altered to meet the issues required in the two other bills that were just discussed.
Correct. Yes, Representative.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions? Questions? Okay, if not, thank you, members. We're going to move on to the next bill on the agenda, House Bill 547. First up, EOEL, Executive Office on Early Learning. Provided testimony and support, Attorney General's Office.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno, members of the committee. Melissa Coloni, Deputy Attorney General. We have the same issue and we've recommended the same standards. Happy to answer any questions. And I do want to just add, we developed these standards just by looking at other statutes and looking at their standards and kind of combining them. And so again, it's just a sample, and we're not saying that that's the end-all be-all of standards. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up, Department of Human Services.
Hi, Chair Mizuno, members of the committee. Dana Luca, Department of Human Services Child Care Regulation Program Office, representing Director Betts today. So yes, this bill is very similar to House Bill 504. 502.
You're correct.
No,
It's
504.
Similar to 504
Okay.
and House Bill 391.
Thank you. So we have the same comments. The department supports the intent of the bill and stands on our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women. Provided testimony in support, AAUW of Hawaii. Provided testimony in support, Hawaii Association of School Psychologists. Testimony in support, Small World Preschool. Testimony in support, Save Medicaid Hawaii. And if I happen to call your organization, I'm trying to I'm trying to be efficient. Just come on up and stop me, and I'll make sure I identify you If you'd like to provide testimony, please do so. So I did say Save Medicaid Hawaii support. Hawaii Children's Action Network speaks.
Hello again, members of the committee. I did want to reiterate that, again, our preferences for HB 391 or HB 547. There is a slight difference, but the difference does not impact the substance of the proposals, so we are okay with either of those. I did also want to note that as we look forward to expanding the different measures, expanding preschools, expanding childcare for folks, we do need to note that the workforce shortage is very real, and so any discussion of expansion needs to start to build that workforce, and it has to go from the full 0 to 5 continuum. So I just wanted to let you know that we're again here for questions, as well as note that the support between HB 391 and HB 547, when we worked with folks in the community, we asked them to submit for both, but some did one or the other. And then one last thing, I did get a chance to look at the Attorney General's comments, and I think it does not change the substance of what we are looking for, and so we are okay with inserting any of those standards, and we appreciate actually the guidance, so that way we can do it the right way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, University of Hawaii at Manoa College of Education. Terry Locke.
I stand in support of my testimony.
Okay, thank you very much. Early childhood action strategy.
Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. Vivian Eto again with Early Childhood Action Strategy. We're here in support of House Bill 547 and also actually House Bill 391 previously. That interchangeability, I think, also is something that we support. Our state, I think there's a general accepted understanding that we're facing a real crisis in the workforce in early care and learning, and we really do need to start somewhere in terms of addressing the compensation issues that are creating turnover and departure from the field and difficulty recruiting and retaining staff. What I do want to highlight again is that focus on infant toddler childcare professionals, which is particularly strategic given the scarcity of available infant toddler programs and the difficulty finding staff for infant toddler programs. Our teaching staff in infant toddler centers are especially undervalued and undercompensated. They make about 22% less on average than folks serving older children, even when they have the same kinds of qualifications. This pilot would address a smaller sector of childcare with extremely high needs, so it'll hopefully establish an initial foundation for future workforce compensation strategies, and at the same time help stabilize a part of the system where we're really at risk of losing capacity and reducing families' access to childcare that they need. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify, and please know I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next up, Holomua Collective, Joshua Wish. Joshua.
Hi, Chair Mizuno, committee members. Echoing what Hawaii Children's Action Network Speaks had said, we support both HB 391 and HB 547. And also, as Caleb had mentioned, we know that a lot of the people who had submitted testimony for 391 would also support 547. I can speak to that especially with respect to a number of the corporations who submitted testimony in support. And I think you'll see when you take a look at their testimony, one of the things they highlight is, as employers, how important it is for the people who work for them to have access to childcare. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joshua. Okay, next up, Hawaii Association for the Education of Young Children. Provided testimony in support. Parent participation, nursery school. Provided testimony in support. I've got, looks to be at least 18 individuals all submitting testimony in support, along with Hawaii Public Health Institute testimony in support. Also, Leeward Community College testimony in support. Would any of the organizations or individuals, either here or on Zoom, wish to come up and testify orally? Okay, if not, thank you, members. Questions? Questions? Any questions on 547? No questions? Okay, thank you, members. We're going to move on to the next bill on the agenda. This will be House Bill 961. First up, Office of the Lieutenant Governor, Sylvia Luke.
Hi, Chair Mizuno, members of the committee. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Riley Fujisaki here on behalf of the Lieutenant Governor. We're just here to stand on our testimony in strong support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, Department of Human Services.
Aloha, Chair Mizuno and members of the committee. My name is Stacy Tonuuchi from the Department of Human Services Child Care Subsidy Program. We stand on our written testimony and support this bill. Again, respectfully, we have the same comment. The department is requesting the legislature consider changing the accreditation requirement to be voluntary until the child care workforce has stabilized. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony, and I am available for questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Okay, next up, we've got University of Hawaii at Manoa, Terry Locke.
Aloha, Chair and Committee.
Aloha.
I stand in support with comments. And so first of all, preschool open doors, I think it's, if we can expand preschool open doors to include 3-year-olds, as well as expand the access for families and really improve the way families can apply and receive that kind of subsidy. So I really want to support that. As far as expansion of EOEL pre-kindergarten programs, I stand in support, but adding 3-year-olds will also require additional resources, and including, because as you provide service to 3-year-olds, you want to make sure that everything's developmentally appropriate, but they particularly might still need to be, might not be potty trained. And so we want to consider resources to address that, as well as just providing more support for the staff, in terms of training and additional staff for adding 3-year-olds to our public pre-K. I'm here to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, we've got Kamehameha Schools. Testimony in Kamehameha Schools. Oh, come on up. I'm sorry. Thank you for being here.
Aloha kako, Ka'ano Iwak with Kamehameha Schools. We stand on the written testimony in support.
Mahalo. Thank you. Executive Office on Early Learning.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno and committee members. I'm Yuko Arikawa-Cross. I'm the Director of the Executive Office on Early Learning. Thank you for offering the opportunity to testify in support of this bill. We appreciate the legislature's intent to increase and expand options to affordable early learning programs and services across Hawaii. The Preschool Open Doors programs provides financial support to eligible families for preschool tuition, and we thank and commend the Department of Human Services in providing substantial assistance to families across Hawaii through this program. We defer to the DHS and the provisions of the bill as it pertains to them. This bill also amends Chapter 302L7 to expand EOEL public pre-K program to enroll 3-year-olds in addition to 4-year-olds. Since the enactment of Act 46 in 2020, we have worked collaboratively with community stakeholders to expand options for all 3- and 4-year-old children across the sector. Currently, EOEL pre-K services 4-year-olds, and enrolling 3-year-olds may increase the amount of children who are in diapers or in need of toilet training support. These environmental and infrastructure additions will help teachers and educational assistants with classroom operations to ensure we are maximizing children's learning and minimizing disruptions to the greatest extent possible. We are also requesting amendments to Chapter 302L7 to include 3-year-olds in pertinent sections as outlined specifically in our testimony. We look forward to continuing our work with the legislature and other partners to increase universal access for our youngest keiki. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Next up, Commit to Keiki. Provided testimony in support. Hawaii Children's Action Network speaks.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today and present testimony and comments. I'm with Hawaii Children's Action Network Speaks. I'm the Director of Early Learning and Health Policy. We have quite extensive testimony and comments that we're hoping you will consider. At the heart of it, though, I won't go through every single one of those. At the heart of it, though, is that there's been a lot of attention to providing universal access to early learning experiences, and that is something that we are very grateful for that attention. What we want to make sure is that that access is meaningful for families. So it's not just something to have a seat. A family must actually be able to get into that seat. And that's from everything from literally getting into that seat to being able to afford that seat. And so what our HCAN Speaks stands in support of the expansion of the Preschool Open Doors program. That is one way in which we can make sure that families have meaningful access to community-based programs. So we stand in support of the expansion 2-3s as well as an expansion of the investment in Preschool Open Doors. We did, I want to note, have some recommendations to make this bill even stronger. I think one of the important things is that when there is, we say mixed delivery, I know it's a little bit of a wonky term, but what that means is that we're giving public investment into programs both in the public setting or public school setting and in community-based programs. And so what the amendments that we had recommended, what it does is make sure that we are providing actual reimbursement that's going to make a difference for preschool providers. What we want to make sure is that we're giving the money so it's not just that they can stay open, but that we're actually incentivizing more to open. And so making sure that reimbursement is high enough is important. Making sure that the program can run smoothly and that there's enough administrative appropriation so that way families there's no chilling effect, like it's too hard to get through the program. And finally, and I wanted to note, because we had been talking about it in HB 261, one of the other recommendations we make is to have the accreditation piece be voluntary. And I think this might be a better vehicle for having that exemption or having that voluntary piece, only because HB 261 is really about getting supports to providers for accreditation rather than the requirement for accreditation. And this is a vehicle where we could kind of address some of the concerns that were brought up earlier in HB 261. That's the Preschool Open Doors side. On the EOEL side, we do have some concerns about the way in which EOEL would expand to serve 3-year-olds. As Director Arakawa Cross mentioned, we need to make sure that these settings are made and curricula and staff are supporting 3-year-olds where they are. So you'll have our comments on what you can look to make investments wisely, and we think that wherever you're going to expand to serve 3-year-olds, we just need to make sure that there's the investment so that the staff, the spaces, and the children are served in the best way possible. Thank you very much, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay,
Mahalo.
thank you very much. Okay, next up, Early Childhood Action Strategy.
Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. I'm here on behalf of ECAS to speak in support of House Bill 961. We're very excited by the state's efforts to grow preschool capacity and increase families' access to early learning. Expansion of the Preschool Open Doors program is a vital component to enabling additional children to attend preschool and benefit from the quality early learning experiences that'll prepare them for kindergarten and later school success. Expansion of POD in particular supports a strong element of family choice into public preschool expansion efforts. POD provides families with access to a diversity of community-based preschool programs that meet a wide range of potential child and family needs and preferences, such as the need for full-day, full-year services that support working families. We appreciate and hope that you will support a combined approach to building out access to preschool through a healthy expansion of the POD program. With regards to the possible expansion of eligibility for EOEL's pre-K program to include 3-year-olds, we would like to respectfully request consideration for the additional supports and resources that EOEL might need to adjust classrooms and practices to meet developmentally appropriate health, safety, and quality standards for the younger age group. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and please know I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Next up, HE Coalition. Oh, yes, come on up. Thank you very much for being here.
Aloha, Chair Mizuno, members of the committee. My name is Sherry Nakamura, Director of HE Coalition. We're a statewide coalition providing a community voice for public education policy. We stand on our written testimony in support of HB 961. As we are traditionally focused on the K-12 system, we know how important it is for our children to have early learning experiences. We appreciate the legislature's effort to expand early learning access through this bill. Mahalo for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up we have ELB. ELB, that organization provided comments. And I have two individuals, Rhea Esteban, provided late testimony in support, and I have Linda Ilento,
Hello, Chair Mizuno and the members of the committee. Thank you again for letting me share some testimony. And yes, I'm probably the only one who said oppose, and I'd like to share why. It's very similar to HB 261. I'm requesting the committee to consider revising Section 346-184 of the revised statutes, adding ACSI, the Association of Christian Schools International, as an accrediting organization, or by exempting the providers with ACSI accreditation from the section. Families need fair access to faith-based providers. Children with developmental disabilities require equal access to programs and not be limited to the age criteria. Almost 20 years ago, my very first testimony given to the legislature was to the House Education Committee regarding funding for preschool open doors. It's been a good program. It's not perfect, but it's been, we heard from the previous testifier, family choice and preferences are something that need to be at the height of our, or at the top of the list of requirements. Let me give you some examples. Children who turn 5 years old in August face 3 full years of preschool. I know this because it wasn't long ago our state changed the cutoff on July 31st. I believe being 5 years old in preschool is not the best for a 5-year-old. Nor do I look forward to seeing my grandson, who did turn 3 or will be turning 5 in August, to have to face another year at preschool rather than going to kindergarten, because I really believe he'll be ready for kindergarten. Through the years, I've seen these early childhood bills come and go. The revised statutes have changed numerous times, including junior kindergarten and regular kindergarten, and that's disappeared. So our laws must allow for flexibility when a child may enter kindergarten, such as when they're ready for kindergarten. And for instance, the special education law is the IDEA. We have the early intervention services up to age 3, although it's allowed for up to age until a child's ready for kindergarten, as well as special education programs and preschool programs. A couple more points. I'm asking that Hawaii really focus on changing policies, not just for early education, but across the board, that we protect our families' choices and freedom from religious and disability discrimination. I know all this from personal experience. That's why I'm providing testimony. But I'm going to end with this, something that didn't take me long just to look up on my phone the last few minutes. It's regarding a Supreme Court case that was decided last June 21, 2022. I'd like to ask that you consider adding this to your committee report, because it's very important. The name of the court case is Carson versus Macon, M-A-K-I-N. This U.S. Supreme Court case strikes down Maine's ban on using public funds at religious schools. I'd like to ask that you consider looking that particular court case and recognize that possibly our Constitution isn't the best and should be amended to make sure that there is no issue with funds going directly to religious schools. I know in the past I've been told we've been able to, anyway, not really making a lot of sense on that point, but I went in with that particular Supreme Court case. It's very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, that's the last testifier. Do we have anyone else wishing to testify either here or on Zoom? This is for House Bill 961. Okay, seeing none, members, questions? Okay, if we have no questions, members, we're going to move on to the next bill on the agenda, House Bill 781. I've got human rights for kids on Zoom. It's Emily.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to address the committee today. And just a quick thank you for your leadership in supporting legislation that protects the rights of children in Hawaii. As you recognize, my name is Emily Virgin, and I serve as the Director of Advocacy and Government Relations at Human Rights for Kids. We're a nonprofit dedicated to the promotion and protection of human rights for children. And I'm here to support today House Bill 781, which will ensure that children consult with legal counsel before they're able to waive their Miranda rights or are interrogated by law enforcement. Protecting these rights will reduce incidents of false confessions by children and will also better align Hawaii's policies with international human rights standards and juvenile brain science. This committee knows that the science tells us that kids are different. Their brains aren't fully developed, especially the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision making. You recognize this all the time in statute, that they have a diminished capacity for decision making. We don't allow kids to drink alcohol, vote, get married, join the military, the list goes on. And we should apply this recognition to children in the criminal justice system. This recognition is crucial when we consider a child's entrance into the justice system. As I said, they're particularly susceptible to giving false confessions because children are not as sophisticated as adults when interacting with the system and being interrogated. They rarely have an understanding of the consequences and implications of those interrogations on their due process rights and what impact their statements may have during a trial. Among people who were accused of crimes as children and were later exonerated, 18% of them falsely confessed. And when the accused child is under 14, that rate of false confessions increases to 86%. By providing children with access to an attorney, we can help them understand the gravity of the situation and prevent false confessions. As a national organization, we track legislation on juvenile justice issues in all 50 states, and protecting the due process rights of children is perhaps the most common issue introduced in states across the country this year and last year that we've tracked, meaning that Hawaii would not be alone in adopting this policy. In just the last few years, Maryland, Utah, and Washington State have passed legislation similar to what you're considering today. And Virginia, California, and North Dakota have had similar policies in place for several years. Legislation similar to this was also introduced at the federal level during the last Congress, and we expect that the same legislation will be introduced again this Congress. We also submit for the official record the following recommendations for amendments to the bill to bring the legislation in closer alignment with human rights standards and new laws in Maryland and California that incorporate best practices. Number one would be to raise the age for the protections in the legislation to include every child under 18. Number two would be to require that the consultation of the child be with legal counsel instead of legal counsel or their parent guardian. And to require that a law enforcement officer who has arrested a child must notify the child's parent, guardian, or legal custodian that the child has been arrested and that they have to provide the location where the minor is being detained. In conclusion, this bill is a common sense, reasonable proposal to protect the rights of our most vulnerable citizens, our children. We strongly urge you to adopt the amendments and vote favorably upon this bill to ensure that we do everything we can to protect the constitutional and human rights of Hawaii's children. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee, for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, next up, we've got James Dode, Human Rights for Kids.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to keep my remarks very brief. Emily did a great job of really articulating our position on this legislation. Just want to thank you again for your leadership in introducing House Bill 781. You and I have worked together for more than a decade now on protecting the human rights of children in Hawaii, working together to pass some of the first anti-trafficking laws to make sure that the most vulnerable children in Hawaii were not subject to exploitation and abuse, and then moving from that issue to ending life without parole sentences for children in 2014 with former Representative Karen Owana, which was another huge step for the human rights protections of children in the justice system, and then again introducing this package of bills in 2019, which includes the very legislation that the committee is considering today, which made significant progress back then, and we're really hoping can make its way through the legislature this year, because these issues really are, as Emily noted, are fundamentally rooted in international human rights law. Back in 2007, the Hawaii legislature passed HCR 69, which was a joint resolution urging the United States Senate to ratify the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And this provision from House Bill 781, it's actually from Articles 37 and 40 of that treaty. And so the Hawaii legislature has, as a matter of policy, already stated that the U.S. should be in compliance with these basic human rights protections for children. And this policy is really just to help, bring Hawaii more in line with that. It's something that Republicans and Democrats across the United States have adopted, as Emily mentioned. And so we really just urge the committee's favorable report. And again, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your leadership on this issue. We look forward to working with you to see this bill finally become law.
Thank you, James. Thank you very much. Next up, Michael Mendoza, Anti-Recidivism Coalition.
Mahalo, dear Chairman and honorable members of the committee. Thank you so much for this opportunity to provide testimony in support of HB 781. I'm in strong support of this bill and also in a strong agreement with my colleagues, James and Emily, in terms of the proposed amendments as well. The Anti-Recidivism Coalition, we're an organization that helps currently and formerly incarcerated people to thrive by providing a supportive network, comprehensive reentry services, and opportunities to advocate for policy change. And like HRFK, our national advocacy efforts work towards providing best practices we have learned on the state level towards setting new national standards founded on hope, healing, and care. In California, where we're based, in 2020, we passed a law requiring youth under 18 to consult with an attorney before waiving their Miranda rights. The legislation was passed with bipartisan support while recognizing that these protections make our community safer. Both Democrats and Republicans in the California legislature took into consideration testimony from San Francisco District Attorney Chesa Bodine, who testified in support, stating that these protections have not diminished his office's ability to prosecute serious and violent crimes. This bill is about allowing our youth to understand their constitutional rights so we can ensure outcome of interrogations not only just and lawful, but from personal experience of being 15, arrested and interrogated, I fully believe these provisions would also create greater trust, accountability, and due process for all. Again, we are in agreement with the proposed amendments by HRFK, which I'll not mention for sake of time. But in terms of the parents, while we believe the presence of a parent or other adult who is close to the youth can be important to provide comfort and support, they're typically not well equipped to assist in the decision about whether to waive rights. And finally, we're equally excited about the national movement and all the great states that Emily had mentioned in terms of passing similar laws. And we're hopeful that these amendments would align the great state of Hawaii in the right direction towards setting the appropriate standards for the rest of the country to follow. And for these reasons, we at ARC support HB 781 and respectfully urge this committee to issue a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have any other testifiers on House Bill 781? Bill 781. Okay, members, questions? Yes, Representative Kobayashi.
Emily, I'm looking at your amendments. Amendment number 2 page 3, line 5. You're saying strike the words "or a parent, legal guardian in person." I think this is an error, because if we include your amendment, legal counsel cannot see the non-adult in person.
Yeah, Emily, are you available on Zoom?
Yes, I was just making sure that I saw where you were referring, Representative. And I think I understand what you're saying. And James drafted that amendment. So we would want that the attorney have contact with the child. The reason we strike out parent or legal guardian or parent or legal guardian is so that, as Michael said, a parent or legal guardian would be notified under the language that we submitted, but that they must consult with legal counsel. So I know that totally, that doesn't,
No, but
yeah, go ahead.
Legal counsel would not be able to meet with the client in person, given your amendment.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I can jump in. That's a great point, Representative, and that is actually an error on our part, and I apologize. We were drafting this yesterday, and so I totally missed that. It should be, the language should end after guardian.
Right.
So it should be strike "or a parent or legal guardian," and then that's the language that should be eliminated. And that, so it reads after, legal counsel in person, by in person, by telephone, or by video conference is how it should read it. So thank you so much for catching that error.
Okay. The other question that I have is, why not allow both legal counsel and or parent, to the extent possible, to meet with client?
Well, thank you for that question, Representative. And I think, in the amendment language that we submitted, the parent would still have to be notified and provided the location of where they're detained. If you wanted to move forward with the bill that requires them to have contact and consultation with legal counsel and their parent or legal guardian, we would certainly support that. But the consultation with legal counsel is really going to be able to help them grasp the gravity of the situation and talk about the waiving of the right.
Of course, we understand that. I mean, many parents would not understand the legal situation regarding their child. So meeting with legal counsel might be much more helpful than meeting with a parent who has no legal background or knowledge whatsoever. But is there language that would allow both legal counsel and parent to meet with the client?
Yes, you could amend the bill and just replace that "or" with an and that would make sure that they have contact with both.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Emily, I have a question. Emily or James, I think instead of putting "and," it might be difficult. Is the word "or" better to be used? Because I understand what Representative Kobayashi is saying, and this is, many it will be parental rights, legal guardian rights. If we could, I'm going to ask you, if we could take out the strike through, at least at this point, shall have contact with legal counsel, or, I'm afraid to put "and," because if both aren't there, then we're not going to get them. So, or a parent or legal guardian in person. If we could get rid of the strike through, are you guys okay with that?
You know, the best practice would be to ensure that the legal counsel is required, that they would have to consult with legal counsel, and that the parent or guardian would be optional, but that they would be notified of the child's detention and interrogation. So, you know, obviously, Mr. Chair, we're happy to support however you would like to proceed, and I understand the difficulties of getting legal counsel and a parent or legal guardian, and so what we would say is that just best practice is making sure that the legal counsel is consulted. That's what various states have done, Maryland being the most recent to require that legal counsel consultation. But we certainly understand, Mr. Chair, however you'd like to proceed.
Yes, I understand this bill, if it moves out of our committee, will go to the Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs Committee. I think you feel a lot more at ease if we can let them take that up, and if we can put in the committee report, best practices indicate that counsel, legal counsel should be present for these minors. But I would like to, if you don't mind, take out the strike through of or a parent or legal guardian in person. If I can take the strike through out on your requested amendment.
Yeah,
Emily?
that is perfectly fine with us, Mr. Chair, and other states have similar language as well.
Awesome, and I'll make sure the committee report has best practices. Legal counsel will be present with those minors. Members, any other questions? James, are you there?
I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
James, yeah, I'm just, haven't seen you a few years since COVID, but I wanted to thank you. Members, this is a great opportunity. James Dode is probably the foremost authority on domestic violence as well as human trafficking and sex trafficking. He ran the Office on Domestic Violence in Washington, D.C. I got to visit it 10 years ago. He has at that office the 24/7 hotline for anyone that's being in a domestic violence situation. They could call. You could be in New Jersey, you could be in Hawaii, you can be, I believe the line was almost worldwide. And so you are an authority, and wanted to thank you on helping Hawaii pass its first sex trafficking and labor trafficking laws, as well as a number of other big bills on domestic violence. So great to see you again, James, though it's been a while, but great to see you. Thank you for all your help, and definitely if we need your expertise in those other areas I mentioned, I know who to call on or email. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you,
members.
Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, James. Thank you. Members, if there's no further questions, yes, Representative Kobayashi.
Emily or James, what do you think of this language? I'm again on page 3, line 4, beginning line 4. The child shall have contact with legal counsel in person, comma, by telephone, comma, or by video conference, comma, and also to the extent possible and with consent of the child shall have contact with parent or legal guardian, period.
That would be great. Yes, thank you, Representative.
Representative, you got that language down, because should we pass this bill, I'm going to turn to you for the amendment,
Yeah, okay.
the Kobayashi amendment. Okay. Yeah, feel free to write it down. Okay, any other questions? Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your testimony and working with our committee members on reasonable amendments. Okay, if there's no questions, members, we're going to move to the last bill on the agenda. I've got House Bill 450. I usually call departments, but I'm going to call Ronald Lewis as the individual first. Ronald, are you here on Zoom?
Yes.
Yes, Ronald, thank you for being here. The reason I'm calling you up before the department, I want them to hear your testimony, because it's the basis for this bill. I remember, if you recall, you had called me about 8 months ago, and I was on the phone with you for like 20 minutes making sure I had what I thought you wanted in a bill, and because of our conversation, we created a bill. Again, though, I wanted you to testify first and then have Department of Human Services come up because they may be better able to then answer the questions we have in this bill. So Ronald, if you can please give us your testimony, and I believe it's in support.
Good morning, Chair, committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony. I support Bill 450, HB 450, for varying reasons. One, it is my belief that no parent should be disqualified for a subsidy based off of getting injured at work. And the subsidy has two eligibility requirements. The eligibility requirements are related to income as well as an eligible activity, which means the parent must be either gainfully employed or in a job training skills program. In this particular instance, at the time that the DHS child care subsidy determines eligibility, they give you 12 months, meaning that redetermination or recertification is done at a 12-month increment from once first determined eligible for the program. In this particular instance, the parent in question was injured at work, and the month that they were looking at in terms of income happened to be the month that the recertification was done. The department looks at only the gross earnings. In this particular instance, the parent had received retroactive earnings because they worked for the federal government, and sometimes before the work comp case is adjudicated, it takes a couple months. So they had, that is what is called retroactive earnings for outside of the period of the month that was being reviewed. As a result of that, the parent was denied for the child care subsidy. So the bill, I proposed amendment to include staying the eligibility requirement for, an activity that would require them to be gainfully employed because technically they are, or to attend the job training skills program because technically they're still employed. They're just totally medically incapacitated. There is language within the Hawaii Administrative Rules, Title 17, Chapter 78, 3 to 11, and it talks about how, lump sum income or payments are excluded income when received in any given month and shall be excluded from consideration. You will note that workers' compensation payments, they're not included in that. And another thing to add is that oftentimes with workers' compensation payments, you will find that once you get your lump sum for back payments, depending on your case, there's a caseworker that also reviews it. And if it's very involved, it can take weeks for them to look at the records, determine if you qualify. With it being the federal government, there's always a backlog. So it could be potential that you don't get paid in the normal time increment that you would be as if you were employed. So there could be a potential lump sum payment. And this provision would only allow for, it says excluding non-recurring lump sum payments. So I know it's all confusing, even confusing for me, but I think that's my position. They have to give special considerations for these type of environments. I don't think the department wants to deny somebody for getting injured at work, and technically they're not separated from their employer. I think this is a technicality that can be resolved.
Thank you, Ronald. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Next up, we've got Department of Human Services.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno and members of the committee. Again, I'm Stacy Tonouchi from the Department of Human Services Child Care Subsidy Program, representing Director Betts today. We do stand on our written testimony and appreciate the intent of the bill. I'd like to highlight that, yes, our current rules do exclude non-recurring lump sum payments when determining income eligibility. And thank you, Mr. Lewis, for your comments. We can look into that definitely, but again, thank you for the opportunity to provide the testimony, and I am available if you have questions.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you. Next up, we've got Linda Ilento.
Thank you, Chair Mizuno. I'm Linda Ilento, and for the last bill, I have some comments I'd like to provide. Again, this is another bill that's very personal, and I've experienced it. I live this. I still do. All right. Regarding the income, the special circumstance for income, I wanted to share that with the child care subsidies. Right now, the Hawaii administrative rules mentions the current activity level as well as the income, just like Mr. Lewis had described. It also applies to if a mom or a dad wants to start a business. Right now, they're required to have at least $1,050 approximately of income in order to qualify. However, in starting a business, you don't necessarily have income that first month. So if they decide to start a business the month that the credit or the eligibility is up, they will likely be denied. That's a concern of mine. Again, we have very specific limits, and we need to look at writing policies that allow for more situations and not being denied. Okay, and I will continue. Taking advantage of the idea of adding special circumstances, I'd like to bring your attention to allowing families to have equal choices and access to faith-based providers who have the ACSI accreditation, like I mentioned earlier, instead of one of the mentioned early education.
Linda,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You're kind of moving away from this bill.
I am?
We heard
Okay.
you loud and clear on the other bills relating to early education, but I think we're focused on,
Just the income?
yeah, what should be considered non-recurring lump sum payments for eligibility.
Okay, well, just similar to like the disabilities that
That
Daintree had mentioned earlier, it applies to my son too. We're looking at a limit or an income limit. It affects the way we fill out applications. We have to, when you have inconsistent income, it might deny somebody, and then you have to start over the process again. It's very interruptive. But thank you very much for listening to my testimony.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate it. Okay, that's all the testifiers I have on our testifier list. Anyone here present or on Zoom wishing to testify on House Bill 450? Okay, if not, questions? Members, questions? I have a question for DHS. Stacy? Yeah, so you, and Ronnie, you're still on Zoom, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I talked extensively with Ronald on this exact subject, and at the time I just did not know if certain types of retroactive pay was considered non-recurring lump sums or not. So I shared that. I will draft the bill. We'll find out. I don't know if this bill is necessary or if I need to, or I can defer it. So here's the million-dollar question, I guess. Is retroactive workers' compensation and/or TDI, temporary disability insurance benefits, considered non-recurring lump sum payments to be excluded as monthly income for eligibility? That's the question.
In the month that they receive it, okay, so non-recurring lump sum means it's just that one time, right?
Yes.
And
yes, I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
okay, no, I'm trying to follow, so.
Okay.
That is correct.
Right, we've got income tax refunds, rebates, credits, retroactive lump sum, Social Security, SSI, public assistance, unemployment compensation benefits, retroactive annual adjustment payments for the Veterans Administration, VA disability pension, lump sum inheritance, or insurance payments. I need a clarification, though. I do not see workers' comp, and correct me if I'm wrong, or TDI. Can we get a clarification?
Sure. That the department can look at that kind of income as being non-recurring, and that's the key. The key is that whether it's non-recurring or not. If it's like a settlement payment, as an example, then it would be considered a non-recurring lump sum payment. If it's a retroactive payment with continued payments as a result of it, then it's not considered non-recurring.
I think actually good answers.
Yeah.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. What I believe I'm hearing is, I'll be the person. I'm getting retroactive workers' compensation. If it's a one-time lump sum, it's not going to be considered in my monthly eligibility income. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, but what will put me outside of the scope of non-recurring lump sum is if I get retroactive workers' compensation for 3, 4, 5 months in a row?
Right, exactly. I mean,
That would
right,
bounce me out.
Exactly, right. I mean, because like you said, the settlement may take a while, and so when the settlement does come through in terms of the claim, the question is, is the person continuing to receive workers' compensation? And so if there is continuous receipt of it, then it doesn't meet the definition of non-recurring. Therefore, then we need to consider it as income source.
Right, seems to be the occurrence. So again, I'm the guy that gets the one-time retroactive workers' comp, not considered lump sum, non-reoccurring, not going to affect my eligibility. All of a sudden, I'm the guy that gets 3, 4, 5 months of retroactive workers' compensation payments. That's going to be considered income.
Okay, sorry, let me correct myself on this.
Okay.
Because workers' compensation as well as TDI, right,
Yes.
are income supplements and it's replacement because they are not able to gainfully receive it through their wages,
Yes.
right?
Right.
And so that's sort of the source of where this payment is coming from. And so that's the reason why it is viewed as income in this scenario. So I want to correct myself on that, because we do also need to understand where the source of the funding is coming from and its purpose, right? And so in the case of workers' compensation and temporary disability, it's a wage substitute, lack of a better term, for that interim period.
So is it or is it not considered non-reoccurring lump sum?
Sorry. Yeah, so again, so wanting to correct myself on my original statement, because a non-recurring lump sum, when we're looking at it for purposes of eligibility, we're looking at it as a source of funding that is not of, it's not a wage type of, or earnings type of funding source.
So
Right.
relative to wage or earnings, because if I'm hearing you correct, workers' comp or TDI is connected, work-related, that will not be considered lump sum, non-reoccurring income.
Yes.
So that's why it's going to bounce, it could possibly bounce me out of eligibility for that month, the next month, and the next
Correct,
month.
correct.
Okay, now, is there any, hypothetically, if this bill were to move on, is there any way, if we include workers' compensation and temporary disability insurance, would that run us afoul of federal law?
That is something that we would need to consult with our federal partners to find out about that. With the child care program is a block grant program, right? And so because of that, it does have certain level of flexibilities. It's based on the state's plan and that the federal government approves. And so income and sources of income are things that we can have discussions with our federal partners to see if our state laws exempt certain incomes. Is it something that our program could also adopt?
Okay, no, that's fair enough. If we move this bill out of committee, it's going to go to finance. I'm inclined to move this bill for the discussion. Now, if we're going to run afoul of federal law, I don't want to jeopardize any of our federal monies.
Sure.
If that's the case, we need to let finance know, and
Definitely.
I will ask that finance not hear the bill. But if you can,
Yes, we can.
include workers' compensation and TDI,
Right.
then that's something I think the department should consider. I think Ronald had an excellent point. Had I not
Yeah.
gotten that call, I wouldn't have known. And at the time, I just didn't know the answer. So at this point, it seems like we're still grappling with the answer. And so I'm inclined to move this out with a defective date. But again, if we run afoul of federal law by putting in workers' comp and temporary disability insurance benefits to be considered lump sum, non-reoccurring income for eligibility purposes, if it's going to run afoul of federal law, we will not move this bill.
Okay, yes,
So-
and we can definitely follow up with our federal partners and get you that answer. And get that
Okay, so
response.
this, if we move it, this will go to finance. Please work with us and at least let the next committee, if they, should they hear it,
Yes.
know that we are now going to include workers' comp and TDI or not, because, and if it is, again, going to violate any federal law, just let me know and I'll notify finance right away not to hear this bill.
We will. We'll
Okay.
do so.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
your
sir.
help. Members, any further questions?
Question.
Representative Kobayashi.
I think the problem is that if we do include workers' comp or TDI, you have to redefine, or you have to define recurring or non-recurring, and possibly put it in a separate paragraph other than paragraph 5. Because typically, you can get TDI on a recurring basis. You can also, as I understand, get lump sum TDI because the system, frankly, doesn't catch up for a month. And so you'll end up, as I understand it, sometimes with a quote lump sum, which is non-recurring, for 2-month payment. And then it becomes regular monthly.
Okay.
So the definition needs to be put in for what is non-recurring or recurring,
Okay.
I
Yes.
think.
Yeah, and I do believe that we, and again, thank you, Representative, for that statement. I do believe that we do have the definitions in our administrators, and you're right, that if there are any changes that we are able to adopt as a result of our discussions with our federal partners, and with the TDI and workers' comp, then we would need to further amend our definition of lump sum.
Thank you.
No, thank you for working with us, and Representative Kobayashi,
you.
appreciate your insight. Members, any further questions? Okay, if not, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. We're going to recess for decision-making, I believe. For decision-making, we're going to reconvene at 11:30 a.m. in this room, 11:30 a.m. I don't know, Ronald, if you're still there. Thank you so much for your testimony. Appreciate all your thoughts. So again, recess.
Thank you.
Thank you. Recess, reconvening 11:30 a.m. Thank you for your patience, everyone. This is for decision-making for today's agenda, February 2nd, 2023. Human Services. First up, House Bill 879. Recommendations passed with amendments and with technical amendments. I'm going to turn to our Vice Chair, who is the author of the bill, to explain the amendments. Vice Chair?
Not Vice Chair, but just a member. But thank you, Chair. I appreciate your time. Also appreciate everybody's input for this bill. We're going to do a number of changes. Members, please bear with me. Throughout the bill, we will clarify that the term to describe well-being will be physical, mental, and emotional throughout. I think there was some notes about it to be consistent through the bill. We'll also strike all the language about bias and prejudice through the bill that was flagged as problematic. We'll take the AG's recommendations in their testimony for page 9, page 19, and page 26. This was to both propose language changes and just moving something to a more appropriate place in the chapter. We'll be striking section 2. Instead of that, we will be adding language to 587-27, which talks about service plans, to add a requirement that in instances of alleged or confirmed domestic violence, the service plan shall include evaluation or assessment of the parent by a domestic violence provider with specialized training in the effects of physical, mental, and emotional abuse. And then to Rep. Kobayashi's point, in the committee report, if we could ask the next committee to look if there's a need to define specialized training. Page 13, lines 14 to 21, we'll be striking that amendment, but in the committee report, if we could ask the next committee to look at that definition to if there's a way to include that sentiment. Page 14, lines 6 to 7, we'll keep grandparent but strike the language about biological grandparents. Page 16, line 19, instead of the term independent that was flagged as problematic, we'll change it to domestic violence provider. Page 18, in section 14, in subsection 14, instead of the follow-up requirement, we'll just have all the interview and documentation be included in that written report filed by the court. Page 18, we'll strike the amendment in lines 18 to 28, and we'll strike the amendment on page 20, line 21 to page 21, line 1. Technical and non-substance amendment and affect the date to June 30th, 3000.
Thank you. And if there's any, did you want to say the appropriation? We're going to blank out if there, I don't think
there's no appropriation.
There's no appropriation, okay. Thank you very much, Representative. Members, any questions before we take the vote? Comments? If not, Acting Vice Chair, can you please take the vote?
Thank you, Madam. Voting on HB 879, recommendations to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. Rep. Amato is excused. Representative Bellotti.
Aye.
Representative Iligan.
Aye.
Representative Kobayashi.
Aye.
I vote aye. Representative Nishimoto.
Aye.
Representative Garcia.
Reservations.
Chair recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much, members. Next bill is House Bill 1181. We heard the testimony from both the AGs and Department of Human Services. They would like us to continue with House Bill 445, which passed out a couple days ago. There's a study group. They just feel this bill is, they're not ready for this, so we're going to defer House Bill 1181. Questions, comments? If not, thank you, members. Next measure on the agenda, House Bill 1461. This is my Vice Chair's bill, Rep. Amato. Per her thoughts, we're going to adopt the Attorney General's amendments and DHS's effective date, but we're going to put that date in the committee report. I'm going to defect the effective date to June 30th, 3000, but we're going to note the recommendation of the effective date by DHS in the committee report. And again, per Rep. Amato's instructions, we're going to use AG's language, contingent on the approval of the Hawaii State Plan amendment by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. We just want to be in compliance so we don't lose federal funding. It's a good bill. It needs a little bit of work, but it's a good bill, so let's move it out with an HD1, guys. Again, like I said, the effective date of June 30th, 3000. And if there's any appropriation, I don't know if there is, we're going to blank that out. And if there is a figure in there, we'll put it in the committee report. But I believe that's it. Questions, concerns on this measure? We're good? Okay. Acting Vice Chair, can you please take the vote?
Thanks, Chair. Voting on HB 1416, Chair's recommendations passed with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Amato. Any reservations?
Reservations.
Reservations for Rep. Garcia. Any noes? Seeing none, all others voting aye, Chair recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much, members. We're now on House Bill 775. Chair's recommendations is to take the amendments by Department of Public Safety. It wants to use the word social worker and/or human service professional. We're also going to adopt the amendments by the Department of Law Enforcement. Their amendment on page 2, line 15, change shall to may. This is for the social worker or human service professional. And we're also going to add language to say be on call for law enforcement. They don't need to be with them 24/7, but if there's a situation, be on call for law enforcement. That's going to be for the social worker and or human service professional. Committee report, I like what Shopo had to say. The police union strongly supports this bill, so I'm going to use their language in the second paragraph, last 5 sentences of the clear intent of the bill. I think Shopo encapsulates what we want to do, so we're going to put that in the committee report. Okay, members, any questions, comments before we take the vote? If not, Acting Vice Chair, can you please take the vote?
Voting on HB.
Oh, and technical amendments. I'm sorry, technical amendments. Thanks.
Voting on HB 775, Chair's recommendations to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Amato. Any reservations? Any noes? Seeing none, Chair recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much. House Bill 777, we got a clarification from Department of Human Services. So technical amendments for this, DHS wanted us to change on page 11, line 7, foster boarding, they wanted us to change that with resource family. Again, page 11, line 7. We're going to do that, and we're going to make the date June 30th, 2000. Again, for those of you that are wondering why we're putting the June 30th, 2000 date, this is just a safeguard mechanism. Should this bill go to the Senate and we are not completely satisfied that we have airtight language, this holds the bill and forces it to go in conference. It's a technique that we use just to make sure the language is airtight. So it's not to make the bill go in effect in year 3000. Okay, there's no funding. Okay, members, any questions or comments? Okay, if not, Acting Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Voting on HB 777, Chair's recommendations passed with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Amato. Any reservations? Any noes? Seeing none, Chair's recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much, members. House Bill 261, Chair's recommendations are passed with an HD1 with tech amendments. In addition, we're going to adopt the Department of Human Services amendments, except one of their thoughts was to allow the accreditation to be voluntary, but they also said if not, they would like for an extension of the time frame for accreditation. I just feel safer that we have accreditation, but I think this is going to be a discussion that we're going to continue. So with that said, we're going to keep the language and extend the time frame for accreditation for these early learning centers, but we're going to blank out the time. Blank the time, so if they need more time, that's fine. Furthermore, the Attorney General's office provided information, comments, and amendments to comply with Article 7, Section 4, State Constitution. This is in regard to the grants. Guys, we've got a number of early education bills, so instead of repeating myself, we're going to use the Attorney General's amendments, and we're going to put into the committee report that they comply with Article 4, Section 4, State Constitution. This is to allow proper standards to distribute funds as grants. We don't want to violate the Constitution, so that's what we're going to do. And we're going to put a section in HRS 346-183, Child Care Grant Special Fund with blank appropriation. Okay, any questions? The effective date, July 30th, 3000. If there's any money in there, I don't think it is. We're going to blank out that amount. Questions, concerns? If not, Acting Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Members voting on HB 261, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Amato. Any reservations? Any noes?
No.
No vote. No for Rep. Garcia. All others vote aye. Chair recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much, members. We've got House Bill 391, adopt AG's amendments, place into the committee report, similar to what we did for 261. The Attorney General's concerns with that the state must comply with Article 7, Section 4. And to add the amendment, I believe DHS amendment that says participants shall not be employed by the Department of Education, public charter schools, federally funded early Head Start programs, or a private educational institution. They wanted that amendment. So let's put down that, that amendment by DHS. Okay, defective date, July 30th, 3,000.
June.
I'm sorry, June 30th, 3,000, thanks. Don't think there's funding, but again, if there is, we're going to blank out the amount. Questions, comments? If not, Acting Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Members voting on HB 391, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Amato. Any reservations? Any noes? Seeing none, Chair's recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members. House Bill 502, technical amendments. We're going to put language, we're going to insert language stating that the pilot program shall cease to exist on June 30th, 2026. And we're going to put in the committee report, Department of Human Services request for clarification relating to child care contracted slots. And we're going to defect the date, DHS, in the committee report. We're also going to note that Department of Human Services is requesting additional time. So we're going to defect the date, June 30th, 3,000. I don't think there was an appropriation, but if there is, we're going to blank that amount. Any questions, concerns? If not, Acting Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Members voting on HB 502, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments, knowing the excused absence of Rep. Amato, and for the rest of the members, noting her excused absence unless changed for the rest of the hearing. Any reservations? Any noes? Seeing none, Chair's recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. House Bill 504, recommendation is passed with HD1 technical amendments, adopt amendments by the Attorney General's office. In the committee report, again, we need to inform the next committee hearing is that they need to comply with the state constitution for distribution of grants. So just make sure we have that in there. Any defective date to June 30, 3,000. Don't think there's funding in here, but if there is, blank out the amount. Questions, concerns, members, before we vote? Thank you. Acting Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Members voting on HB 504, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Any reservations? Any noes? Reservations for Rep. Garcia. All others voting aye. Chair's recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Members, House Bill 547, similar recommendations, adopt the amendments by the Attorney General's office. Please note in committee report that we need to comply with the standards of the Constitution when we distribute grants for DHS. So again, just heads up, put that in the committee report. I don't think there's funding in this one, but blank out appropriation if there is. And we're going to use the effective date of June 30th, 3,000. Questions, concerns? Not. Acting Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Voting on HB 547, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any reservations? Any noes? Seeing none, Chair's recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members. House Bill 961. This is a really big bill. We are going to pass with an HD1 tech amendments. There is an appropriation worksheet. I think they're talking about 39 million plus for school year 2024 to 2025, and another 35 million plus for school year 2025 to 2026. Put that in the committee report. We're not going to put that in the bill. We'll put that in the committee report. And Executive Office on Early Learning, they had amendments. We're going to adopt their amendments to ensure coverage for 3- and 4-year-old children. Members, we're going to defect the date to June 30th, 3,000. Again, appropriation sections are blank. but we're going to put the 35 million for those school fiscal years in the committee report, so finance, education knows what we're talking about. Questions, comments, concerns? If not, Vice Chair, can you please take the vote?
Voting on HB 961, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Any reservations? Any noes?
No.
No vote for Rep. Garcia. All others voting aye. Chair recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much. House Bill 781, recommendation passed with an HD1. Tech amendments, and adopt the amendments by the Human Rights for Kids, notwithstanding, and adopt amendments by Human Rights for Kids. I'm going to turn to Representative Kobayashi for his amendments for House Bill 781. Representative?
Amendment on page 3, line 4, after the word age, the child shall have contact with legal counsel in person, by telephone, or by video conference, and also shall, to the extent practicable and with consent of child, shall have contact with parent or legal guardian in person, by telephone, or by video conference.
Can I announce it even after we took the vote? Okay, that's the recommendation for that bill. Any questions, concerns? If not, Vice Chair, can you please take the vote?
Members voting on HB 781, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any reservations? Any noes? Seeing none, Chair recommendations adopted.
Okay, members, I apologize. If we can go back to, been informed that we can do this, House Bill 504. I missed the appropriations and effective dates, so blank out any appropriations if it's in there. Put the effective date June 30th, 3000. This is again for House Bill 504. My understanding is that we can make the amendment as long as we're still in decision making. Okay, and is that it? Did I miss anything else?
I think we,
And House Bill 775.
do we have to take a revote?
We don't have to take a revote. We're just making the amendments. Is that what HMSO is saying?
You just have to make the announcement and then
Okay.
you don't have to take the vote.
Okay, so HMSO is saying we have to make the announcement. We don't have to take the revote.
Okay.
Okay, and 775, same thing. I needed to give you guys the effective date. June 30th, 3000. Sorry about that, guys. June 30th, 3000. And if there's any appropriation section, blank that out. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, guys. Okay, we covered
Yep, last bill.
last bill now. Okay, thanks, guys. 450, Chair's recommendation, we're going to move this with the House Draft 1. The effective date to June 30th, 3000. I don't think there's an appropriations section, but if there is, blank out the amount. In the committee report, I want to note that Department of Human Services said that they'll be working with us to determine if retroactive workers' comp and temporary disability insurance benefits should be considered non-reoccurring lump sum payments and excluded as monthly income for eligibility. So please note that in the committee report, we will be working with Department of Human Services on this measure to see if they can include workers' compensation, retroactive workers' compensation, and temporary disability insurance benefits to be considered non-recurring lump sum payments. The effective date, please, June 30th, 3000. I don't think there's any appropriation in here, but if there is, blank it out. Questions, concerns, members, before we take the vote? If not, Acting Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Voting on HB 450, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any reservations?
Reservations.
Reservations for Rep. Garcia. Any noes? Seeing none, all of the members vote aye. Chair recommendations adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. We're now adjourned. Thank you.